What's the best joke you know? An Irish man walks into a pub. What'll you have? The bartender asks. Give me 3 pints of Guinness, please, says the man. The bartender brings him 3 pints, and the man proceeds to sip them alternately, the first one, the next one, and then the third one, until they're all gone. He then orders 3 more. Sir, says the bartender, I know you like them cold. You don't have to order 3 at a time. I can keep an eye on you, and when you get low I'll bring you a fresh cold one. You don't understand, the man says. I have 2 brothers, one in Australia and one in the States. We made a vow to each other that every Saturday night we'd still drink together. So right now, my brothers have 3 Guinness stouts too, and we're drinking together. What a wonderful tradition, the bartender says, smiling. Every week after that, the man comes into the bar and orders 3 beers. But one week, he orders only 2. He drinks them and orders 2 more. I know what your tradition is, says the bartender sadly, and I'd just like to say that I'm sorry that one of your brothers died. Oh, me brothers are fine, says the man. I just quit drinking. Edit. Thanks for the awards. Guy walks into a bar and says to the bartender, I'll show you something amazing for a beer. Bartender agrees. Guy pulls out a 10 pianist from his pocket and sets him on the bar. He starts playing beautifully. The bartender, wowed, demands, where the hell do you find that little man? Guy says, I've got a tiny wizard in my other pocket. For another beer, you can make a wish. Bartender agrees and says, wizard, I'd like $100,000. Suddenly the bar fills with $100,000. Bartender, confused and angry, says, what the hell, mate? I didn't want $100,000. Guy responds, oh, you think I wanted a 10 pianist? My all-time favorite to tell at parties. There was this man in Bulgaria who drove trains for a living. He loved his job. Driving a train had been his dream ever since he was a child. He loved to make the train go as fast as possible. Unfortunately, one day he was a little too reckless and caused a crash. He made it out, but one person had died. Well, needless to say, he went to court over this incident. He was found guilty, and was sentenced to death by electrocution. When the day of the execution came, he requested a single banana as his last meal. After eating the banana, he was strapped into the electric chair. The switch was flown, sparks flew, and smoke filled the air, but nothing happened. The man was perfectly fine. Well, at the time, there was an old Bulgarian law that said a failed execution was a sign of divine intervention, so the man was allowed to go free. Somehow, he managed to get his old job back driving the train. Having not learned his lesson at all, he went right back to driving the train with reckless abandon. Once again, he caused a train to crash, this time killing 2 people. The trial went much the same as the first, resulting in a sentence of execution. For his final meal, the man requested 2 bananas. After eating the bananas, he was strapped into the electric chair. The switch was thrown, sparks flew, smoke filled the room, and the man was once again unharmed. Well, this of course meant that he was free to go. And once again, he somehow managed to get his old job back. To what should have been the surprise of no one, he crashed yet another train and killed 3 people. And so he once again found himself being sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he requested his final meal, 3 bananas. You know what? No, said the executioner. I've had it with you and your stupid bananas and walking out of here unharmed. I'm not giving you a thing to eat. I don't know what the bananas do to help you stay alive, but we're strapping you in and doing this now. Well, it was against protocol, but the man was strapped into the electric chair without a last meal. The switch was pulled, sparks flew, smoke filled the room, and the man was still unharmed. The executioner was speechless. The man looked at the executioner and said, "Oh, the bananas had nothing to do with it. I'm just a bad conductor. Not mine. I went to a beekeeper to get 12 bees. He counted and gave me 13. Sir, you gave me an extra. That's a freebie." What's the difference between a hippo and a zippo? One is very heavy, and the other is a little lighter. What did Cinderella say when she got to the ball? Makes gagging sound. I told this to my family when I was like, 11? Went over well. A proctologist walks into a bank. He needs to sign a document. He tries to sign, but he pulls a thermometer out of his shirt pocket. Oh shit, some asshole has my pen. People are shocked when they find out what a terrible electrician I am. "Doc, you gotta help me. I can't stop singing. What's new, pussycat?" "Ah, that sounds like Tom Jones syndrome. Is it common?" "It's not unusual." "What did the sign on the door of the brothel say?" "Beat it, we're closed." A man goes to a funeral. He asks the widow if he could say a word. He goes to the front and says plethora and sits back down. The widow leans over and whispers, "Thanks, that means a lot." Edit. "Thank you everyone. I gladly will add on your lines when I retell this joke. You have all made my day brighter." Another man approaches. He had been a close companion of the deceased. He too asks the widow if he might speak, and heads to the front. "Bargain," he says. The widow pats his arm. "That means a great deal." My personal favorite one. A man comes up and asks to say a few words, and the widow gives him the okay. He steps up to the mic and says with confidence, "Waterpit." The widow gives a small smile. "Thanks, I know you mean well." As a Finn, I have a special fondness for Russian, Soviet political jokes. A new arrival to Gulag is asked, "What were you given 10 years for?" "For nothing. Don't lie to us here, comrade. Everybody knows for nothing is 3 years." A judge walks out of his chambers laughing his head off. A colleague approaches him and asks why he is laughing. "I just heard the funniest joke in the world." "Well, go ahead, tell me," says the other judge. I just gave someone 10 years for it." I remember one. A man once received 25 years in prison for saying Gorbachev was an idiot. 5 years for insulting the leader, 20 for revealing state secrets. My favorite Soviet joke. An old man is applying to the state for housing. He looks over the form and it has 4 questions. Where were you born? Where were you educated? Where do you live? Where would you like to live? He thinks about it and writes down, St. Petersburg, Petrograd, Leningrad, St. Petersburg. They're all the same place, just under the imperial and then communist governments. He wants it back the way it was before they changed the name. Here's a favorite of mine regarding the Winter War. There is an army of Soviet troops at the crest of a hill when all of a sudden from the other side they hear, "One Finn can kill 25 Soviets." The Soviet commander enraged sends over 25 men. Gunfire erupts and then stops. Then out of the stillness the same Finn speaks again, "One Finn can kill 50 Soviets." So the commander sends 50 men over again and the same result happens. Gunfire, then silence. Again the Finn shouts, "One Finn can kill 100 Soviets." In an absolute fury the commander sends in 100 men to dispatch the lone Finn. Gunfire erupts again and then silence. Only this time a Soviet soldier crawls back over the hill and shouts to his commander, "It's a trap, there are 2 of them." 3 prisoners in a gulag talk. 1. "So why are you here?" 2. "My clock was early so I came to work early and they said I was spying. You?" 1. "My clock was late so I came to work late and they said I was running anti-state propaganda at home. Hey, what about you?" 3. "My clock was on time so they said I smuggled it from the West." A Czech and a Russian are walking down the road and find 100 crowns, Czech money. The Russian says, "Comrade, let's split this like true communists." The Czech says, "Oh no, we're splitting this 50-50. A Soviet Communist Party official was giving a Westerner a tour of the Russian countryside. All the while he was bragging about how loyal Soviet citizens were to the communist cause. To demonstrate he approaches a farmer and asks, "Comrade, if you owned 2 houses would you donate one to the party?" "Absolutely," replies the farmer. "And if you owned 2 tractors would you donate one to the party?" "Oh, yes," replied the farmer. "And if you owned 2 cows would you donate one to the party?" "Not a chance," replied the farmer. Surprised, the party official asks why not. "Because I actually own 2 cows," replied the farmer. My personal favorite. An Englishman, a Frenchman, and a Russian are looking at a painting of Adam and Eve. The Englishman admires the painting and says, "Look at them, calm, reserved, and proper, surely they are English." The Frenchman laughs and replies, "They are naked and beautiful, there is no doubt they would be French." The Russian slowly shakes his head, "My friends, they are definitely Russian. No clothes, no house, no possessions, they have only an apple to eat and they are told this is paradise." Ronald Reagan used to tell this joke, about a Soviet man who wants to buy a car. The man goes to the official agency, puts down his money and is told that he can take delivery of his automobile in exactly 10 years. Morning or afternoon? The purchaser asks. 10 years from now, what difference does it make? Replies the clerk. Well, says the car buyer, the plumber's coming in the morning. Edit. Video. Link. Stalin is at his dacha and suddenly needs to get back to Moscow as soon as possible. He wakes up his private driver and they head out right away. We will need to drive through the night, says Stalin. We'll take turns driving if we have to. After several hours, the driver is beginning to drift off. Stalin says, pull over, I'll drive for a while. And so off goes Stalin driving like a maniac, with his driver snoozing in the back. Outside of Moscow, the police pull Stalin over for speeding. As the cop comes up to the driver's window, he turns pale and waves Stalin on. Back at the police car, the poor cop looks like he's going to pass out. His partner says, what happened? Who was it? I don't know, but he must be pretty damn important. He's got Comrade Stalin driving him around. Speaking of Russian politics, I always found this joke very amusing. Russian Prime Minister Medvedev comes to President Putin and nervously tells him to abolish time zones. Why? Putin asks. I fly to another city, call home and everyone is asleep. Last time I called Angela Merkel to congratulate her on her birthday and she tells me she has it tomorrow. Or I wished the Chinese president a happy new year, and he says it was already yesterday. Indeed, Putin replies, but that's only a minor issue. Remember when that Polish plane crashed with the president? I called them to express my condolences, but the plane hadn't even taken off yet. A man leaves Stalin's office and curses quietly. That fucker with a mustache. Unfortunately, a security officer overhears him. He takes him to Stalin and says, I overheard that man say, that fucker with a mustache. Stalin asks, who are you thinking about? And the man quickly answers, well, Hitler of course. Stalin looks at the officer. And who are you thinking about? My favorite Soviet joke, a little long. An American and a Soviet die and meet St. Peter at the pearly gates. He tells them they're to go to hell but have a choice between American and Soviet administration. The American laughs and opts for an American administration. The Soviet, in spite of himself, chooses the Soviet administration out of a sense of patriotism. After some time the two meet up and the Soviet asks the American how things are. He replies, it's not too bad. Life here is pretty boring, you just have to eat 2 buckets of shit a day. How about you? The Soviet replies, just like back home. They tell us we need to eat 2 buckets of shit a day but, you know, the usual mess. One day the trucks break down, one day they run out of shit. One day, the speculators sold all the shit on the black market. A man died and was sent to the paradise. After a while, he became bored with the paradise, with the eternal quiet, abundance of flowers, absence of worries. So he requested to let him visit the hell as a tourist. God consented. In hell he saw people playing cards, drinking wine, and making love. He liked it very much and upon return to the paradise applied for a transfer to hell for good. God consented. As soon as he appeared at the hell's gate, demons grabbed him and pushed him into a barrel with hot tar. Stop it. I was here with a visit and saw the people drinking vodka, playing cards, making love. Don't confuse the area designated for tourists and sustained by the propaganda department, with this area which is for residents. 2 Russians are drinking vodka. They sit in absolute silence for 8 hours, just sipping their vodka. After 8 hours of silence, one of the Russians says, "Good vodka." The other Russian shouts back, "Are we talking or drinking?" A hotel in the Soviet Union. A room for 4 with 4 strangers. 3 of them soon open a bottle of vodka and proceed to get acquainted, then drunk, then noisy, singing, and telling political jokes. The 4th guy desperately tries to get some sleep. Finally, in frustration he surreptitiously leaves the room, goes downstairs, and asks the concierge lady to bring tea to room 67 in 10 minutes. Then he returns and joins the party. 5 minutes later, he bends to a power outlet. "Comrade Major, some tea to room 67, please." In a few minutes, there's a knock at the door, and in comes the concierge lady with a tea tray. The room falls silent, the party dies a sudden death, and the prankster finally gets to sleep. The next morning he wakes up alone in the room. Surprised, he runs downstairs and asks the concierge lady what happened to his companions. "You don't need to know. She answers, "B but what about me?" asks the terrified fellow. "Oh, you, well. Comrade Major liked your tea-gag a lot." Russian jokes are the absolute best. A man sees someone else walking down the street with one bare foot. "What happened, did you lose a boot?" he asks. "No." The other guy responds with excitement, "I found one." What's big as a house, burns 20 liters of fuel an hour, and can cut an apple into 3 pieces? Private Petrov's mother died and the top brass told his drill sergeant to inform him, but do it delicately. On the next day the sergeant gathers the entire platoon and shouts, "Privates, everyone WHO has a mother, move 2 steps to the front." "Petrov, where the hell are you going?" The Soviet housewife goes to town to buy bread. She waits online for 2 hours, and when she finally gets to the counter she sees the shelves are completely bare. Frustrated, she asks the shopkeeper, "Are you completely out of bread?" And the shopkeeper says, "No, I'm sorry, we're out of meat. The store with no bread is next door." My absolute favorite Soviet joke, because it's so horrifyingly dark but also clever and perceptive. Everyone is waiting on the bread line for hours. Eventually the commissar comes out and yells, "There is not enough bread for everyone today. No Jews will be given any bread. All Jews, leave the line and go home." All the Jewish people leave the queue. 2.5 hours later, the commissar comes out again and booms, "We are out of bread. No more bread for anyone today. Go home, all of you." As people turn around and leave the line, one of them can be heard grumbling, "Damn Jews, getting preferential treatment yet again." Did you hear about the man with 5 penises? His pants fit like a glove. How do you spot a blind man in a nudist camp? It's not hard. Waterboarding in Guantanamo Bay sounds like a great time if you don't know what either of those things are. 2 guys are walking down the street when they see a dog licking his balls. One guy says, "I wish I could do that." The other replies, "Well, maybe just try petting him first." 3 men went to hell, and they stood before the devil. The devil asked the first man, "What did you do for a living?" The man answered, "I was a lumberjack." The devil said, "Then we will chop your penis off." He turned to the second man, asking the same question he asked the first. "I was a fireman," said the second man. "Then we will burn your penis off," said the devil. He turned to the third man, asking the same question he asked the other 2. The third man thought about it, and finally answered the devil, "I was a lollipop salesman." A boss had 2 employees. Alice and Jack. He only needed one. But they were hired at the same time and were both equally good at their job. He couldn't decide which to get rid of. He was sitting at a bar thinking about the situation. Alice walks in and sits beside him and asks, "You seem down, what's wrong?" The boss said, "I need to either lay you or jack off." Alice says, "Well, please jack off, I'm tired. I mixed up the words jacuzzi and yakuza and now I am in hot water with the Japanese mafia." An English job foreman is hiring, and an Irishman soon appears requesting a job. Laughing, the foreman responds, "You? Hire you? I doubt you know the difference between a girder and a joist." After a moment of pondering, the Irishman responds, "Well, one fellow wrote Faust, and the other wrote Ulysses. And my favorite when it's okay to go off color." Mother Superior is sitting in the convent one night when she hears a knock at the door. She looks out the peephole, and, seeing no one, very cautiously opens the door. She's stunned to find 2 leprechauns standing meekly, hats in hand, on the steps of the nunnery. "My sons. How can I help you this fine evening?" "Well, mother, have you any leprechaun nuns in this convent?" "I'm sorry, my son, we've no leprechaun nuns here." "Well, mother, do you know of any leprechaun nuns anywhere?" "No, my son, I don't know of any in all Ireland, and if there's none here then there can't be any leprechaun nuns in the whole church." At this the first leprechaun whips around, jabbing his finger at his companion. "Ah tol, you'd been fucking a penguin." Why does the Little Mermaid wear seashells? Because she's too big for B-shells. Edit. Had no idea this was gonna blow up. Thanks all of you for all the awards. The divorce court judge says to Mickey, "Now let me get this straight, Mr. Mouse. You want a divorce from your wife Minnie because she's crazy?" And Mickey says, "No, I never said she was crazy, I said she was fucking goofy." What's the difference between a dirty bus stop and a lobster with breast implants? One is a crusty bus station and the other is a busty crustacean. I went to the zoo and saw a baguette in a cage. I asked the zookeeper about it, and he told me it was bred in captivity. A man sat down at a bar and told the bartender, "I bet you $300 that I can piss into the cup all the way over there on the other side of the bar and not miss a single drop." The bartender said, "There is no way you can do that." "Sure, I'll bet you $300. The man then begins to undo his pants and begins pissing. He starts pissing all over the bar, spraying on the bottles and the bartender, not making a single drop in the cup. The bartender starts smiling and laughing and says, "That's it, you owe me $300. The man then gets up and walks over to the pool table and starts laughing and shaking hands with the men standing there. He walks back to bar, sits down and starts laughing at the bartender and hands him the money. The bartender asks, "Why are you laughing? You just lost the bet." The man said, "I'm laughing because I bet those guys over there $1,000 that I could piss all over you in your bar and you would still be laughing when I was done." Doctor, I swallowed a pen. Well, sit down and write your name. This one is a long one, but one of my all-time favorites and a classic. A businessman is getting ready to go on a long business trip. He knows his wife is always horny, so he decides to get her something to keep her occupied while he was gone, because he didn't much like the idea of her screwing someone else. So he went to a store that sold sex toys and started looking around. He thought about a life-sized sex doll, but that was too close to another man for him. He was browsing through the dildos, looking for something special to please his wife, and started talking to the old man behind the counter. He explained his situation to the old man. "Well, I don't really know of anything that will do the trick. We have vibrating dildos, special attachments, and so on, but I don't know of anything that will keep her occupied for weeks, except a," said the old man, and then he stopped. "Except what?" asked the businessman. Nothing, said the old man. "Come on, tell me. I need something," protested the businessman. "Well, sir, I don't usually mention this, but there is the voodoo dildo," the old man said. "The voodoo dildo?" the businessman asked. The old man reached under the counter, and pulled out an old wooden box carved with strange symbols. He opened it, and there lay a very ordinary-looking dildo. The businessman laughed, and said, "Big fucking deal. It looks like every other dildo in this shop." The old man said, "But you haven't seen what it'll do yet." He pointed to a door and said, "Voodoo dildo, the door." The voodoo dildo rose out of its box, darted over to the door, and started screwing the keyhole. The whole door shook with the vibrations, and a crack developed down the middle. Before the door could split, the old man said, "Voodoo dildo, box." The voodoo dildo stopped, floated back to the box and lay there, motionless. The businessman said, "I'll take it." The guy took it home to his wife, told her it was a special dildo and that to use it, all she had to do was say, "Voodoo dildo, my pussy." He left for his trip satisfied things would be fine while he was gone. After he'd been gone a few days, the wife was unbearably horny. She thought of several people who would willingly satisfy her, but then she remembered the voodoo dildo. She lay down, placed the box between her legs, and said, "Voodoo dildo, my pussy." The voodoo dildo shot to her crotch and started pumping. It was great, like nothing she'd ever experienced before. After 3 orgasms, she decided she'd had enough, and tried to pull it out, but it was stuck in her, still thrusting. She tried and tried to get it out, but nothing worked. Her husband had forgot to tell her how to shut it off. So she decided to go to the hospital to see if they could help. She put her clothes on, got in the car and started to drive to the hospital, quivering with every thrust of the dildo. On the way, another orgasm nearly made her swerve off the road, and she was pulled over by a policeman. He asked for her license, and then asked how much she'd had to drink. Gasping and twitching, she explained that she hadn't been drinking, but that a voodoo dildo was stuck in her pussy, and wouldn't stop screwing her. The officer looked at her for a second, and then said, "Yeah, right. Voodoo dildo, my ass. I had a song stuck in my head the other day and kept singing it out loud. My wife finally broke down and screamed, 'Will you please stop singing Wonderwall?' I said maybe. I bought the worst thesaurus the other day. Not only was it terrible, it was also terrible. Edit. Well, shucks. Thanks for all the awards and for my most upvoted comment. You're all great, and also, you're great." I walked into the pharmacy and asked for some deodorant, the ball kind. Just for under the arms is fine. A penguin is on a long-deserved vacation from the zoo. He decides to take a road trip out west, where his car breaks down. Luckily, it's right in front of a mechanic in town. He drops the car off and tells the mechanic he's going to get some lunch. It's a really hot day, so after eating he stops by the ice cream shop for a little treat. Walking back to his car, the mechanic tells the penguin it looks like you blew a seal. The penguin laughs. "Oh, no," he said, as he wiped his mouth, "it's just ice cream." A pair of hunters from Illinois are out in the woods. Whilst descending a hill, one of them suddenly cries out in pain and falls to the bottom, clutching his chest as he hit the ground. The other hunter rushes to his side as his friend noticeably stops breathing. Pulling out his phone, he quickly dials 911. After a few rings, the dispatcher picks up. "911, what is your emergency?" asks the dispatcher. The hunter replies, "I am out near Route 51. My friend has a heart attack. I think he is dead." "What do I do?" asks the hunter. The dispatcher replies, "It is okay, sir. Can you calm down and make sure that he is dead?" The hunter replies, "Okay." The dispatcher hears some rustling over the phone, followed by the resounding boom of a 12-gauge. The hunter comes back on the line asking, "Okay, now what?" Joke is courtesy of my stepfather and his old drinking buddy. The men of many laughs. How many potatoes does it take to kill an Irishman? None. One day 3 people were stuck on an island with cannibals. The cannibals said, "If you do what we say, we won't kill you." So the 3 people followed the orders the cannibals. So the cannibals said, "Go into the forest and pick 10 fruits of the first fruit you see." So the first person came back out of the forest with 10 apples. The cannibals said, "Put the apples up your ass," without making a facial expression. The person then made a facial expression after the second apple, so the cannibals killed him. The second person came back out of the forest with 10 cherries. The cannibals said, "Put the cherries up your ass," without making a facial expression. The person then started laughing on the 10th cherry, so they killed him. In heaven, the person with apples asked the person with cherries, "Why did you start laughing?" The person replied, "I saw the third person come out with pineapples." This guy sees a sign. "Talking dog $5. He walks up and asks the man, "Does this dog really talk?" Owner, "Yep, bullshit dog. It's true, I can talk." Man, holy shit. Dog, "Yeah, I started out in the circus as a sideshow, until the CIA found me. They recruited me as a spy. No one suspects the dog in the room is listening to state secrets. After 2 tours, I retired here in the country to live out my days." Man. My God, man. That is the most astounding thing I have ever heard. So, why the hell are you only selling him for $5? Owner, because that dog is a liar. He didn't do any of that shit. What do you call a dog with steel balls and no hind legs? Sparky. What do you call a dog with no legs? It doesn't matter, he won't come anyway. Edit. Thanks for the awards. I thought it was cigarette. Every night you take him out for a drag. Why did the blind man fall into the well? He couldn't see that well. My grandpa would tell this joke called the Yangtze River story. Relatives would look at me and say, "Get comfortable." He finally took the time to tell me at my cousin's wedding. There once was a family that lived on the Yangtze River. They had an outhouse right on the river, and one day, it was pushed off the bank and floated downstream. The father of the family lined up his 3 sons. Young, teen, and almost adult, they lined up, facing where the outhouse used to be. The father asked the boys one by one, "Did you push the outhouse into the Yangtze River?" The youngest turned his head to the left, staring at the house they all lived in. It was a big red house that they all worked together to paint last summer. It was cold now, with winter approaching and the paint needing another coat soon. The father went to the next boy, "Did you push the outhouse into the Yangtze River?" This son looked straight up, swallowing hard so that his throat made an audible sound. Finally, he asked his eldest son, "Did you push the outhouse into the Yangtze River?" The boy locked his father's gaze, but declared, "No, I did not." The father pulled out a pastry from the nearby village. "I am going to tell you a story. And by the end, you will tell me who pushed the outhouse into the river." The boys all fidgeted, but were ready to hear their father's story. One day, a little boy chopped down his father's cherry tree. Instead of lying, he told the truth, and his father rewarded him, gave him candy, and he grew up to be George Washington, the President of the United States. Slowly, the youngest boy stepped forward. "It was I, father, I pushed the outhouse in the river." With a flash, the father had his youngest bent over his knee, his belt in his hand, lashing hard. Crying out, the boy shrieked, "You said! You said the father George Washington's father wasn't sitting in the cherry tree." A Chevy Silverado, a Ford F-150, a Ram 1500, a GMC Sierra, and a Toyota Tundra are driving in convoy best pickup line ever. What's the difference between a lentil and chickpea? I would never pay $200 to have a lentil in my mouth. Dad. The trash man's here, tell him we don't need any. Real dad joke coming up. What's a pirate's favorite letter? Most proceed to say RRRR? You'd think it's the R, but its first love is the C. Edit. Thank you for the Silver Stranger EDIT2. Thank you for the Hugs Award. EDIT3. First Gold. Thank you Third Kind Stranger. EDIT4. A Rocket Life Award. Not sure what that is, but thank you. EDIT5. Woke up to a load more awards. Thank you all. Pirates love the C, no doubt, but the truth is their favorite letter is actually P. Without it they're just irate. Stalin is sitting at his desk busy with paperwork when his assistant bursts into the room and says, "Comrade Stalin, there is a clairvoyant here that wants to see you. He claims he can see the future." "Send him to Gulag," says Stalin. "If he could see the future he wouldn't have come here." Not mine. An Irish man wants a job, but the foreman doesn't think he's actually qualified. The foreman, being a little bored, decides to mess with him and tells him he'll get the job if he passes a little math test. "Here's your first question," the foreman said. "Without using numbers, represent the number 9. "Without numbers?" The Irish says, "Dat's easy." And he proceeds to draw 3 trees. "What's this?" the boss asks. "Aven't you got no brain? Tree and tree and tree make a 9, explains the Irish. "Fair enough," says the boss. "Here's your second question. Use the same rules, but this time the number is 99. The Irish stares into space for a while, then picks up the picture that he has just drawn and makes a smudge on each tree. "'Ere you go." The boss scratches his head and asks, "How on earth does this represent 99? Each of the trees is dirty now. So, it's dirty tree, and dirty tree. Dat is 99. The boss is getting worried that he's going to actually have to hire this fellow, so he says, "All right, last question. Same rules apply, but represent the number 100. The Irish stares into space some more, then he picks up the picture again and makes a little mark at the base of each tree and says, "'Ere you go. 100. The boss looks at the attempt. "You must be nuts if you think this represents 100. The Irish leans forward and points to the marks at the base of each tree and says, "A little dog come along and, go, by each tree. So now you got dirty tree and a turd, dirty tree and a turd, and dirty tree and a turd. Dat makes 100. So, when am I gonna start?" Edit. Switched Italian to Irish because a few of you suggested it, also switched a few wordings. Edit 2. Switched the accent a lil because I'm dumb and forgot. Edit 3. Modified a bit more because I suck at accents. I'm sorry. Okay. A bus stops and 2 Italian men get on. They sit down and have an loud and animated conversation. The lady sitting behind them ignores their conversation at first, but she couldn't help overhearing them when one of them says, "Emma come first. Den I come. 2 asses, they come together. I come again. 2 asses, they come together again. I come again and pee twice. Then I come once a more." The lady yelled at them, "We don't talk about our sex lives in public places here." "Hey, coola down lady," said the Italian. "I'ma just tell my friend Hoa to spell a Mississippi."